we started to shoot a story of Andy Warhol directing a film in D'Antonio's apartment up on the east side. And all the people there were Gerard Malanga, and I've forgotten a lot of the names, but I took a lot of stills that afternoon, which I've still got. And a friend of mine has actually identified all the people in the background of the stills, and they're all the ones from the factory, the famous ones. And I have no idea what the film was about, because he made it up as he went along. They were shooting silent, you see, so he was directing them like an old-fashioned silent movie.
How radical was that, say, to anybody like what does today?
Oh, that was totally off the planet, totally different. Who today would make a fortune out of pictures of soup cans? The panorama story was called Scandal Down Under. I'd come back to live in Sydney in 1981, and then in September, October 82, Tom Mangold and Chris Oxley came out from London to do a story on Australian corruption, which was pretty thick then. But it shook the political system up here unbelievably. The corruption and the money laundering and the drugs and all the rest of it. A lot of it still rumbles on today. That's where the Love Boat scandal came from. Big Jim, James McCartney Anderson, who was a standover man, and he took us on a tour of the Cross one night, and as soon as we walked out in the street with the camera and the sound recorders, got hustled, and he just walked up and he said, "They're not making a picture about, they're making a picture about me. Do you have a problem with that?" Whole street went quiet. We did what we wanted. But he stood under that big sign where it used to say "Lay Girls," and because we wanted him in the thing, I was on the other side of the street, and he had a radio mic on, and some woman came up and talked to him, and it turned out she was the woman in what turned out to be the Love Boat scandal, where they used to entertain politicians and such on a boat in the harbour. There was one incident, we're sitting in a restaurant in Kellett Street in the Cross with Big Jim, and we were talking about another man and the clubs and what have you, and he said, "Oh, well, the little rent books, you have, R&P on them." "What's R&P?" we asked. He said, "It means rent and police, where you're paying the rent and covering up what you're paying the cops." And he said, "I'll make a phone call, we'll get some of these books." And a young man arrived, beautifully groomed, straight out of David Jones' window, with a brown paper bag, and put them down and sat down in the back of the restaurant and had a cup of coffee. He pulled out these things, and they're court evidence. They've all got the court labels on them. And there are the books, showing all that. And the other guy the guy who was at the back of it was Abe Saffron, who was quite a big time in the shady underworld in those days.